Hey, good morning. Welcome to the last day of the Digital Credentials Summit. We'll get started in just a minute. We'll give another second for people to come in from breakfast. So I know we have people joining online. We also have, I want to save hopefully some time for some questions as well. So we'll go ahead and get started. First, I just wanted to say how much I've enjoyed some of the sessions that I've sat in on and kind of tip my cap to the IMS Global team. It's really great to hear from so many people that have a similar interest and understanding of kind of what's happening in the world today. So as I share kind of my organization's vision for what we're calling the University of the Future, I think what I came to the realization yesterday was you guys are maybe ready for a different conversation, which might be, into kind of the how we're doing some of the work that we're doing and getting down kind of deeper. Today, I'm going to share with you kind of the why and the what. But I will say at the next meeting, I'm going to bring some friends with me, and we're going to kind of get down into the weeds, maybe have a couple of different sessions where you can talk about how we're working and kind of carrying this work forward. So the other thing that I really walked away from a couple of the sessions I sat in on was that you're at this conference because you share an understanding and a view of kind of how education is changing. And so I was having lunch with Rob and Mark yesterday, and I was like, we need people at this conference that don't get it yet. Or maybe you're just kind of on the edge of like, I'm still kind of skeptical, but what is this about? And so, how do we bring more people into the conversation? Let us help you. If you have people, in your organization, they're kind of like, I don't know, if this is for us yet or not, bring them here and let us kind of show the work and that's going on. I know I've got a couple folks in my organization that I'm going to say, okay, you guys got to come along and really hear what's happening. So I work at Southern New Hampshire University. That's the little acronym at the bottom, SNHU. If you call it SNHU, we can be best friends. So that's our colloquialism. And so, you come up to me afterwards and say, hey, that's awesome what you're doing at SNHU, you're in. So, that's, just a little bit of inside, skinny on us. So a little bit about me. My name is Travis Willard. I'm the Chief Product Officer at SNHU. And I have a really interesting way of coming before you today. I grew up about 60 miles east of here in a little town called Athens, Georgia. Go Dogs. And I have about 25 years in the ed tech industry. About 7 of it spent as Chief Technology Officer for the Georgia Department of Education, which is just a stone's throw from here. So I spent a lot of my early career in K-12. I also was president of a learning management system company, which had an office here in Atlanta called It's Learning. And that's how I got to know IMS Global. And so we were working with Forsyth County Schools here in Atlanta. We were working with Houston ISD. And if you see Beatrice around, she can tell you all about the work that we did there. And the thing that we were doing was crazy. We were trying to get publishers to recognize this standard called Thin Common Cartridge. And what we wanted to do was to bring all of their different content into one platform, so that when teachers and students needed to find that information, they only had one place to go. Instead of that outdated paradigm where you have to go log into the publisher's platform to get that particular piece of content. We were trying to bring it all together. And that actually led to Houston ISD winning a Learning Impact Award, which was, seems like a long time ago now, but it was really, I think, impactful work. So when I was in K-12 education, also just kind of paralleled with when my daughter started K-12 education in Georgia. And so now that she's off in college, I had to kind of stalk her, and I moved into the higher education world. So I think the interesting thing about the term product is not something that we normally hear associated with higher education. And in fact, a lot of people kind of bluster because they think about product as something like something you make and you sell on Amazon, or something that you produce and is kind of a commodity. So let me define for you a little bit what we mean by product at SNHU or SNHU. So when we think about the product that we're delivering, we have a lot of different ones right now. And it really starts with an identification of the market that we're in and what those learners need in that market. And so when we have a campus model, like our campus of about 4,000 students in Manchester, New Hampshire, that's a very different approach than we would take to a product that we have for refugees in Africa, and the way that we would deliver the academic content and programs, the way that we would let those students know that that's available to them, and really how we articulate how we can address the needs of those students in that particular area. So really, we think a product is that kind of end-to-end experience that starts with an acknowledgement of like, what is the market, what are the needs in that market, and we'll get into more of like what we call those needs and things like that. And then how do we bring students into that experience? What are the academic programs they need to be successful? What are the supports that are needed to be able to give them more just-in-time help when they run into the challenges? And also, how do we keep them up to date on what are the things that we're continuing to do so that we can think of them as really lifelong learners? So, like I said, we have several different products today. We have a very growing online product, and we have various kind of products that we have in different markets, international, and with different partners. The thing that we're doing by calling out product as an overall effort within the university is now we can look across the different products that we have and look at inefficiencies that we see, ways that we can help kind of scale out these different products overall. And that's why we're really thinking about new models for how we will service our students in the future. So I hope that's helpful. It's not that we are selling widgets. We're not. We don't call our students customers because they're not. They are learners. And our end result is that we want to help them along their path. So through COVID and all the things that are going on in the world today, we recognize that our learners are asking things today that we can't give them. They want a different experience from university. They want a different outcome. And so it's really forcing us to question not only how we deliver new academic programs, but also what are the supports they need to be successful. And so when I think about, I'll ask you by a show of hands, have you had kids that have gone off to college recently or have maybe finished college recently? I know that I have. And it was a very different experience than when I went to college. When I started at the University of Georgia, it was $800 a semester, right? And it was, there was not a lot of risk. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think there was a lot of faith in this student to be able to be successful, but it's only $800 a semester, so it's not that big of a deal. Now we're in a different environment. So my daughter enrolled at the University of Vermont, beautiful campus, Burlington, Vermont. If you ever are in the area, please, stop by. It's an amazing campus, but it's expensive. And what they offer, she didn't really want. She ended up in a religion major, of all things, and she also ended up, by the grace of God, also getting a scholarship to go. So, I think that when we were really questioning whether or not she needed to get a degree in order to reach her goals, that was the conversation we had to have as a family. And I think more and more that conversation is happening. And more, there are more jobs available out there that aren't requiring a degree. So we have to really think about our model in higher education and how that's going to meet the future needs of our students. And you've seen the statistics. They're in the headlines all the time. We aren't necessarily seeing a return on the investment of higher education. And recently, the Georgetown study found that almost 30% of students that finished college didn't have a positive ROI after 10 years over someone with just a high school diploma. That's not good enough. And when you think about the trends that we're seeing, is we're thinking that we're going to see less and less enrollees in higher education, especially starting in kind of the class of 2025. So not only is there kind of a cliff of enrollees that we're seeing, we're also seeing there's also a question of whether or not it's actually needed. At the same time, we have more students that come to us and actually leave worse off than when they started, because they don't have a credential, they don't have a degree, and now they've got debt on top of everything else. And the amount of debt has just grown astronomically. I was in a presentation yesterday, they said 800% since 2000, and I believe it. So, I think it's really important for us to think differently about how we are funding our students to kind of get the knowledge that they need. And then the last piece, and I think, kind of the thing that we're really tracking, is that we have a workforce that is hungry for workers, and we have more openings than we actually have people to do those jobs today. But they don't have the right skills, they don't have the things they need to be successful. And so how do we align more to those outcomes versus our traditional model, which is we're going to give you a wide variety of high-level skills that we think you're going to need, and we're going to hope there's a job for you at the other end. So we learn from our learners. We ask them. We talk to them. We also talk to the employers that are out there. We are out there in the market constantly, kind of looking at and getting the feedback from where our learners are today. And they really are concerned that if they're going to make time for us, that it's going to pay off for them. So if I'm going to take the time out of my life and away from my family and probably the job that I'm already working and dedicate it to this, is it going to have a benefit? And so one of the things that we hear most, kind of right close second to cost, is time. Is this time going to be valuable? Is it going to be important and impactful for me, in my life? So you're going to see from the next few slides feedback that we've gotten specifically from our learners and quotes from our learners that say, these are the things that they're asking for. The other thing is they want flexibility. And our president, Paul LeBlanc, who I'm actually filling in for today, says that SNHU is for the student that couldn't afford a $400 car repair. So these people are already in the workforce. They're working, on a daily basis, and so things happen. You get a sick child. You have to take time off work. And so, when you're so bound by that paper that has to get turned in, or that particular, seminar you need to attend in order to be progressing on your path. They want that flexibility. And so, I love the quote that's, you probably can't read, but it really talks about, hey, I had to make the decision of whether I was going to go to class or I was going to go to work and feed my family, and what's going to win out. So more and more, we have to be flexible and give kind of on-ramps and off-ramps for you to kind of, I always, my son who's 16, he goes, what exactly do you do? And I say, well, it's kind of like we want to press save on your video game, right? You want to be able to save your progress so that when you come back, you haven't lost all the things that you've already learned or all the things you've already done. You need to be able to come back in at your save point and be able to continue on. And so that means, us being more flexible about the programs that we have. And also, I think it's a little bit of advocacy here. We also think about how we think about Title IV and how that really is structured as well. So the other piece to this, and this is a really important part for the work that we're doing in what we call the next generation of ecosystem, is that we want to be able to recognize a learner for the skills that they already know. What is the knowledge they've been able to gain already? Maybe that's through a work experience, maybe that's through military experience, maybe that's through, hey, I already learned that in high school. And we hear that a lot. We hear that a lot, especially with the gen eds, right? I already learned this. Why am I having to learn it again? And the issue that we have a lot of times is like those first term persistence rates. And if you feel bored or you feel stuck at having to go through the same thing again, we know that that's going to be a challenge for you. So how can we assess you for the prior knowledge you already have? How can we help you accelerate the path that you're on and give you credit for those specific things that you already know? And for us, that means a really strong understanding of how we teach the individual things we teach today. We break them down into competencies, and then we can then assess you on that individual competency as well. Oftentimes, we end up giving you even credit from other institutions. We end up giving you elective credit. And because we can't go, I know this because, it just happened to come up recently. My daughter was in a course called The Occult, and it was a writing course. And so how would you know that's a writing course if you were a registrar at another university, right? You wouldn't. And so you can only really kind of map to what you know or what you see on paper. But if you had the ability to say, there are specific competencies in these courses, there are things that I was able to demonstrate and show what I know, then we can really hone in on what are the skills you've already learned. So we hear this from almost 50% of our learners, is they want more credit for what they already know. And what does that do? How does that benefit from them? If we can then give them that credit, and then we can reduce the time it's going to take, it's also going to reduce the cost it's going to take for them to get the credentials that they want. The other thing that we really believe is that we have an outdated paradigm for the way that we create new academic programs. Typically, this has been a faculty-driven process. The faculty teach what they know. And so when new programs come up, that's really because we have new faculty members. And so they bring forward what they know, and that's what they want to teach. We're thinking differently. We need to be more market-driven. We need to be thinking about where are the jobs that are out there, and then really break those jobs down by their ONET codes into competency statements that can then drive the future development of our academic programs. So this is something that our learners expect their professors to be doing today, their faculty members. They expect that connection to the real world, to the jobs that are out there. It's a real shifting, paradigm, and one that, I'll be frank, is sometimes a struggle, because we are, first and foremost a university, and we're having to think differently about how we deliver new programs. So this leads us to where we are today. We are thinking about a different model, a model in which it takes a focus of digital credentials, that's why we're here, and really aligns that with the skills, the prior learning, and the academic programs that we need to deliver. And this is something that we have a time frame for. We call it SNHU 2025, and it's something that we know that will never change, or we'll never get there, right? Even though we put kind of a time horizon on it, this is something we'll want to continue to kind of shift and grow over time. So we are turning our university into a continuous improvement model, and one that we think will always be challenging the status quo, and that really is kind of in our mission. So just by a show of hands, have you heard of SNHU before? So probably from the amazing commercials that our marketing team puts together, right? And you're like, watch the commercial and you're like, God, who's chopping onions in here, right? And so, but they're very poignant stories, and they're absolutely real. So when we have commencement, we fly all of our students to Manchester, New Hampshire, and the stories that come out of there are just amazing, about people who have overcome adversity or overcome the different challenges they have to really kind of achieve this lifelong goal of getting their degree. But I think our mission, says it really well. We will continue to challenge the status quo and provide the best support in higher education. And this is really moving us into the thought of creating not degree programs, but pathways for student success. So your ultimate goal may be a 2 or 4 year degree, and we completely support that, but the notion that you need to get a degree is probably an outdated one. And so what we are looking to do is to say, where do you want to go? What are the jobs that you want that are in the industry today, even down to your local geography? And how can we get you the fastest and the most efficient route possible? At the same time, we're going to give you credit towards a degree so that you can continue on when you have the time and the flexibility to be able to do so. So what you may not know is that we are 165,000 learners today and growing. And we really started kind of this precipitous growth before COVID, and it's just continued, through COVID. But we're on track this year to graduate 45,000 degrees, or confirm 45,000 degrees, which is just amazing. And you think about the traditional student as being this one that's already in the workforce today, but we actually have 30,000 learners that are 18 to 22 as well. So just the scale of any of the regular brick and mortar universities as well. So I think that the one thing that we will potentially challenge is that 200 plus accredited degree programs. Do we need 200? What's the right number? And is it a degree program or is it a pathway? And so what are, a constant struggle to say, what are the most in-demand jobs? Do they need degrees? And how can we help you really realize your goal? And this is the problem that I was mentioning. We build degrees based upon a really broad set of what we understand are skills, but when that shifts and employers are wanting something different, then there creates a gap. And what we hear continually from the employer community is that when I get students from higher education, they're not ready for the workforce. And in IT, that might be because I don't need somebody who can just code. I need somebody who can work in a team together. I need someone who can arrive at work on time. I need someone who can plan their day because they're going to be remote. And so these are competencies that we don't normally teach, but they're things that we are considering in our approach. So you end up with a same set of skills that you would have in a degree program, and then you have a delta of skills that we need to develop rapidly and be able to bring to market so that our learners align with the jobs that are out there in the market. So how do we do this? What we're doing today is we're articulating competency paths. And so we're taking that typical course, Math 125, and we're breaking it down into 3 competency statements. We have a model, somewhat controversially, of a 1 competency to 1 credit model. Meaning that for a 3 credit course, you're going to have 3 competencies. We will grow past this, I believe, but for transferability and stackability, we really need to think still with 1 foot in the course-based model. We break down those competencies into individual competency statements, and that allows us to then align to learning objects and assessment to be able to really assess whether or not you have mastery of that particular competency. So this work is gone on through our catalog. We're not there yet, and we may never get there 100%, but what we're doing is we're focusing on really what that market demand is. So one area that we're really interested in today is healthcare, and the overlap of competencies that kind of lead you to a pathway towards a BSN in nursing. There are a lot of overlap in the different courses that you have to take and the different competency approach. So if we can really map those competencies and really have you on a specific pathway, we can save you time and money in order to really get there and continue you on the way as well. So this is a big undertaking, and a lot of it's manual today. A lot of it is the team sitting there and doing this work by hand. And we need a different environment in which to really kind of speed this up. So when we think about overall competency mapping and skills, my team has come up with this great metaphor, and as someone who has spent a lot of time in Minecraft realms, I can tell you that it resonated with me. We're building the building blocks, right? And like you would have in a Minecraft world, we've got different types of blocks that we can put together, but the thought is that it would be modular, and you can kind of build your pathway based upon these blocks. So targeting the right learning and identifying the gaps, that program between that degree we have now and what the ONET code is telling us. Delivering that just-in-time learning experience. So how can we give you what you need when you need it, and reduce the time to only completion, but also give you incentive and along the way to keep going. We think about, there's an overall problem in higher education of persistence. And so how can we keep you motivated to see that next step, that next competency you can earn, and what that can unlock for you as well. And then the most important thing is then mapping that set of competencies to career outcomes. So if I were to take these competencies, it's going to enable me to apply for this particular job. If I continue on that path, then I can see another job and another job and another job. And so that's what we are hearing that our learners want today. But again, it's manual. and it's an arduous process. So what we are doing is we are creating a digital ecosystem for being able to do this at scale. And it's technology based, but it's based upon the work of real people and people who have to understand how this works today. So we have the academics in the room, but what we're trying to do is train machine learning models to be able to do this more efficiently in the future. So it starts with really an understanding of kind of what are the existing skills that you have. How can we give you that? I won't use PLA because we're talking about, is it skills for prior learning? No. I forget the new acronym, but it's no longer PLA. It's no longer prior learning. That's it. Yep, skills or credit for prior learning. So what that will do is it will really create a specific competency map that will be specific to each one of our learners. And so if we can help to automate this process, this is also something that we feel like is value to the higher ed industry at large, and something that we are open to share. That's why we are such believers of IMS. We are believers in open standards, and we will be aligning this work to both CASE and other standards that are out there. But I think that's also our desire to think about what is needed in a comprehensive learner record and how we could potentially work with other institutions on that as well. So if we do this right, then we have the ability to kind of balance your work and school, get your dream job, stay out of debt, and gain those marketable skills and provide the most effective and the pathway for you to get there. And so all those things that we've heard from our learners, we're not trying to solve one of them, we're trying to solve all of them. And will we do it effectively the first time? No. We won't get it right. But that's why we are focusing on product as a skill and thinking about how we iterate, how we improve, how we test, and how we then put our learnings into practice. And so that goal is that personalized pathway for every learner. Of course, that will look different in different modalities. It'll look different in different markets because you're not necessarily going to have the same needs of a product that you have for personalized learning in a refugee camp in Africa. That may require more of a coaching model for support versus someone who is already in the workforce and who just wants to get through it as quickly as possible. The other piece that we are developing, and I'll give our head of marketing all the credit for this, is something that we call a needs scoring system. And so if you think about a lead scoring system, that's a system that as you have actions through a marketing channel, your score goes up, and we know how to prioritize you as a lead. And this model, the more or least activities that you do may be indicators that you need more help. And so we have to think about how we take away this kind of one-size-fits-all model of student support, which has typically been our advising, and we have to think about how we focus on the students that need the most needs and how we really put together the interventions for those students and how we can then develop patterns in the data that interventions can work best for that type of student. And this is also a machine learning type of model where in K-12 we would call it an early warning system. But this is something that we think is important because we will have a lot of different variables in higher ed about how our students are being successful, what goals they're on, and also how we can help support them more effectively. It starts with more automation than we're used to, and more automation than sometimes we're comfortable with. because that's, we're not really comfortable with it yet. But I think we've seen other industries do this. Through the use of bot technologies, RPA, things like that, we can automate some of those back-end processes and be able to provide more real-time supports for our learners. So this entire effort that we've been talking about is really a transformation. It's a transformation of our university at large. And the big transformation is to move the learner into the center of how we are thinking about our university. So this learner-centric model really reimagines the university in a lot of different ways. So kind of at the 11 o'clock, university is career partner. We're not thinking about this as like, hey, we're going to give you a degree and never talk to you again. We're thinking about this as a lifelong journey for when you want to upskill or reskill in your career, we're going to be there to help support you. And that means that we want to really understand what's going on with you as an individual. We want to build a profile of, what your goals are, what your time frame is, even what your budget is, and then help align those to what we call university as a curator, which is to then take the individual pieces of skills that you need to develop that pathway for you as an individual. University as translator is that competency piece, breaking down the competencies into the programs that we deliver so that you can then take the goals of our learners, match it with the academic programs we deliver, and hopefully come up with a really solid match in that area as well. The university as credentialer is interesting. Like I said before, we're really reliant upon Title IV right now. But with the need in the marketplace for more skilled workers, what we're seeing is a bigger desire for employers to step up to the plate and provide the additional learning that they need for their workers. And if we can do that, we think that's amazing, because now you can not only not have to incur that debt, but you're actually getting the skilled workforce that you desire. So, and this is a conversation that's being had in multiple industries. So certainly something that I think is a ellipses of how that will play itself out, but we think it's a really impactful deterrent against collecting more student debt. So those credentials today are degrees, but they may be micro-certificates, they may be certificates, they may be less than certificates. And so we're also trying to think about what is a different currency for a competency as well. Because our currency today is still the Carnegie unit, which is a 3-credit bit of learning. And so if we can do this effectively, could we come up with a new currency for less than that Carnegie unit for a 1 competency bit of learning? So the ecosystem of the future, I'll kind of sum it up as kind of 3 overall points. One is learning design. So making sure that our learning is aligned with the market and the way that employers are looking for the skills that we can produce. The second piece is the learner outcome. We are, like most of higher education, a one-size-fits-all model today. You can get a degree. We have to think differently. We're thinking in pathways, and those pathways can be flexible. A great example would be, I was a CS major. I didn't know what I wanted to do, it just sounded good. Now, whether or not I was good at it was just luck. But if I get into a CS degree, and now I decide that actually what I want to do is I want to do more analysis work, and I want to go and learn more things like R that can kind of take me down that path. Maybe I'm like on the CISO track and I want to, be able to take more cybersecurity, courses. Maybe I want to be in DevOps because I just find it fascinating how things, move through the system. That flexibility to kind of shift as you earn skills and give you more options is really, I think, where we see things evolving to. The last piece, and this is really critical to the mission of SNHU at large, is we want to make higher education not something that is in and of itself selective. We want to make it available to more learners, and to do that, we have to reduce the cost that it takes to deliver those things. So by not, we use this term, we do peanut butter spread, which means we spread a little bit of resources across all 200 plus programs that we support. And so by targeting those areas of greatest need, those areas that we think are going to lead to jobs, we can prioritize not only our development costs, but also how we deliver new programs as well. So that, we think, will not only reduce the cost of how we operate as a university and help us scale, but it will also help us reduce the cost it takes for you to earn these skills as well. So overall, I think this is, really something that, like I said, is kind of the what and the why of the work that we're doing. I've really enjoyed getting to hear some of your sessions and understanding that you're kindred spirits in a lot of this work. And so I think at the next conference, we'll start to think, kind of share with you how we're doing this work and how we're moving out on this. It's not easy. And it's not something that we have all the answers for today. And that's what I've been, telling my team is like, hey, it's okay. We can, live in this area of ambiguity because we have the right mission. We will solve hard problems. What we need is we need partners that can help us solve these problems. That can be other higher ed institutions, that can be vendors, but we're not going to do it all on our own. We're not going to try to do it all on our own. But we think this is a model that has applicability to all of higher education, and that's why we call it our future university. So the last thing is I would just say that, again, the way that we define product is that end-to-end experience. So we're not only thinking about those academic programs, we're also thinking about how you stay engaged and how you consume this. I remember when LTI was the greatest thing because at least you didn't have to go sign into another platform. But now we know that LTI is going to launch a new tab, or it's going to create a new experience, and you're going to go to have 30 tabs open, and that's not exactly the great experiences either. So we've got to think differently about how we also think about integration standards, how we end up creating an end-to-end digital experience that can really meet and engage our learners where they are. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions you might have. There are a couple of mics floating around, and if you want to raise your hand, then we'll get you a mic.
Thanks, Travis. It's great to hear about what you're doing. I'm definitely a SNHU fan. I've been to the Milliard, so just like the mecca of what you do there. I could ask you so many questions, but I'm curious about the role as curator. Can you imagine a time when a SNHU counselor might recommend a learning experience that's outside your ecosystem as part of the student's journey and say, for that, really, Coursera has a great course. We think you should do that. Or, we think what would really benefit you is go do a face-to-face course with an instructor. And Pima Community College has a great course, and why don't you go take that course, and it's on Tuesday nights, which should fit in your schedule. I'm curious if you're imagining bringing in more educational providers into the mix for your students.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's exactly why we need to come up with a different, basically language for how we build these courses. And we want to think about the way that we curate content differently as well. So, today, a lot of us use the same content, which is from publishers. And so in that world, we want to take what is the best experience. There's one right down here. we want to take what is the best experience, what is the best efficacy of content, and be able to kind of build that pathway that may mean, an alternate, institution that delivers that. I don't think we have any problem with that whatsoever. It does feel a little bit further away. And so that's why I think these, gatherings are so important, that we can start to kind of think and talk in the same language. We can, set the same goals and strategies for how we could get there. But yeah, I think it's a great point. Yes, sir.
Thanks for a great session here. And model for the University of the Future is one that makes a ton of sense. I'm curious, you mentioned an over-reliance on Title IV funding and the alignment of financial supports with credit-bearing programming, but you're also suggesting a model that becomes more unbundled and more reliant on more flexible learning options. How do we bridge the financing gap for learners so that if an employer isn't in a position to fund student learning, we're still able to create low-cost pathways for those learners into programs that might not be subsidized?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that it's inherent in the question, right? If you are not taking 120 credits in order to get your degree, you're only taking 40 credits to get you on, the pathway to get that job, that inherently costs less, right? It costs less to develop, it costs less for you to get there. And so, I don't ever see us getting away from the reliance of Title IV, but the spirit of what Title IV provides, most people understand it actually doesn't get you all the way to the end, right? So you're having to think about, like, how far is that going to get you anyway? So, but it can get you to where you need to go. Now, I think there is an advocacy part of this as well to provide more flexibility in the way that we use Title IV. And so we think about, an eventual, like, year long term, right, that you can come in and out of. And so I think, more subscription-based models, more things that, are able to kind of get you just the competencies you need instead of everything that you want is kind of our approach. All right, that's my time. I think I'm over. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time.